Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another very special edition of WOWSA Live with our host, Ned Dennison. Ned?
Hello, everybody. I'm the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. It's my great pleasure to have one of our honorees, Hugh Tucker from South Africa, with us today. Hugh, please say hello to everyone.
Hello, everybody. It's Hugh here.
I'm going to give a brief introduction of Hugh's resume and the reason he's in the Hall of Fame, and then we'll get on to some questions. Hugh's been a leading contributor for open water swimming in South Africa since the early 1970s. He's coached, piloted, crewed, and observed over 350 swims, which is an incredible number. South African marathon swimming has its heart in the Cape area where Hugh is based, and that includes the cold waters generally of Robben Island. More than 50 South Africans have soloed the English Channel with a very high success rate. Hugh has had a positive impact, directly or indirectly, on just about all those who soloed since the 1970s. He's not taken pay for his activities, so he's one of those true volunteers in our sport that we depend on so much. For the swimmers that he coached in English Channel, that also means a very expensive trip up to Dover. Hugh is also contributed to the success of many honorees coming to swim in South Africa, including Lynn Cox, Kevin Murphy, Louis Pugh, myself, and Christoph Wansrat. Hugh's also an accomplished and determined marathon swimmer in his own right, and we'll get to that in a minute. So Hugh, tell us about your early days of swimming, kind of how you got into this whole open sea marathon thing.
Well, one day I was in Clifton Beach and I decided I was going to swim around to Barker Rock. So off I went, and on my heels was Peter Bales. And he chaperoned me around the rock. When we got out, he said, "You're good, you must give it a go." And that was my introduction into long distance swimming. And the water was cold. Well, for me, it was cold. It was about 10 degrees.
And was Peter original role models?
Definitely, he was definitely the role model, Peter Bales.
You set several speed records in your day, and I wanted to mention those. 3 Anchor Bay to Robben Island, 2 hours and 45 minutes. It stood for 7 years. Simonstown to Muizenberg, 2 hours and 41 minutes. The record was only broken in 2001. Stood for 29 years. And how did you congratulate the people who broke your records, Hugh?
Well, I think I just phoned them and just said to them, you know, well done, because I know that those swims are hard. There's one record that I do have that will never get broken, and that's the one to Cape Town, because I managed to sneak in before they closed it up and turned it into a harbor. So I've got one forever for the rest of eternity. And that's also quite nice. I don't have to find anybody. Hey?
Did you pay to have a major development done at the harbor right where you landed so no one could ever break that record?
Well, it wasn't a very big, it was about $10 billion. And so I was not, yeah.
Hugh, you live next to the infamous False Bay, which seems to have been a little more passive in the last couple of years. Tell everybody about False Bay, geography, size, distance, temperature variations, and if there's any wildlife down there.
Well, False Bay is the length of the channel, which is 36 kilometers. And it has some fairly interesting wildlife in the name of great whites, and there are about 200 of them. So if you do swim, and you're lucky enough to have swum there, they would have seen you for sure. You would not necessarily see them because they are quite clever in hiding themselves. So what's happened recently in False Bay is that we've got 2 orcas, and orcas are the only things that chase away great whites. So right now, this is a hell of a good time to swim across False Bay. We've also got a seal colony of about 74,000. And that's why the great whites are there to eat them, and preferably not us.
So the crossing is about 20 miles in a bay absolutely full of fish, with an active seal colony and apex predators.
That's about it.
And when the wind blows from the south, what happens to the temperature of that water?
You get a very strong upwelling, and the water can drop from 19 degrees to about 12, 10. And invariably, for some unknown reason, it seems to happen every time we try to swim it, that upwelling takes place. And the chop comes across. And I do remember your swim. It was one of the tough ones because you had that horrible chop coming from the southeast, churning it up.
Is that what you meant by saying it might freshen up in the afternoon, Hugh?
I was hoping you weren't listening, but yes, that would invariably happens. It's famous for the afternoon winds.
You have one of the most fascinating English Channel personal solo stories. Give us a brief synopsis of it, and then I got some very specific questions for you.
Well, on my first attempt in 1972, I swam for 11 hours, and I managed to swim to the back boat because I felt myself passing out. So when they actually got me into the small boat, they tried to feel for my heart, and I had no heartbeat at all. So clinically, I was dead. But I'd been swimming quite near a girl called Anita Smith, who had the same problem. She also died, but she had a doctor on board. And they instructed the guys, Captain Hutchinson, what to do with me. And they managed to get me back fairly easily. That was my first attempt. And then I did another 2 attempts that year. And then in 2003, I tried again. In 2004, I tried again and made it.
So you had a little rest there between the first year and the second year of what, about 30 years?
Yes. So it shows that age does not count too much.
Now, the urban legend I heard, Hugh, was that over the years, the people from South Africa, the swimmers would say, yeah, we have a 100% success rate except for Hugh. Did you hear that same urban myth, and was it true?
Unfortunately, it was true, and it was quite a hard pill to swallow. But in the meantime, I also did a relay across the channel, a double relay, with some fairly famous people. One was Corrie Ebbelaar, who broke the women's record, and Ray Dixon, who swam butterfly across the channel.
And I heard a great story. Don't mention the pilot's name, but I heard a great story from one of your swims where the pilot, let's assume it with all the good intentions of the world, thought that it would calm down, but during the swim it didn't calm down. And when the pilot tried to pull you, is it true you negotiated the price for the next swim before you got out of the water?
He said to the people on board, the pilot, he said, he doesn't like taking South Africans because we do negotiate from the water. And I did manage to negotiate from the water for this time the following year. And he says, South Africans are the only people, even when they're ice cold, negotiate a deal. So that's what happened on that one.
I fantastic. And of all the swims that you had done yourself, was that English Channel success the one you were most proud of, or were there other swims that you look back and thought you swam better, or it was more difficult, or you're more proud?
No, I think managing to do it with my wife, making it a lifetime experience, I think that's what really added to it. Something that you know you can do and you really want to do. But so it became a family affair.
And were you impossible back home when you finally made it?
Completely.
Tell us about your involvement with the Cape Long Distance Swimming Association. Kind of when did you start, And, when did you leave the committee and your contribution over the years?
I sort of probably started in 1970. We had about a 15-foot wooden boat called Angel, and we had a 40 horsepower motor and another engine called a Seagull. And that was the total amount of help that we got. No GPS, no cell phones, nothing like that. So you did it by sight and by ear.
And looking back over those times with the Cape Long Distance, what were the most pleasant surprises you were involved with swimmers? And what were the scary surprises over the years?
We had one swimmer who was going to do a double, and he was very, very cocky indeed, because he told us what time he was going to do it in. And about 20 minutes out, we bumped into a sunfish that looks like a massive, massive fin out the water, and he swam into it. He virtually walked across the water, got in the boat, and we took him back, and we never, ever saw him again, ever. That was the end of him. The other scary one was Peter Bales, just off Robben Island. It's the only place that we've seen a great white. And it just cruised underneath him, turned on its side, looked at Pete. Pete looked at it, and we all carried on. Luckily, the great white moved off in its own direction, but it wasn't aggressive at all.
And did Peter have to throw that swimsuit away afterwards?
Yeah, and all the people on board the boat also had to.
Hugh, you own and ran two companies, a canoe paddle manufacturing company and a canoe adventure company. You were your own boss, so you could carve out time to help these 350 swims. Why, Hugh? What was the experience like? What was the enjoyment? Why did you dedicate so much of your time? You probably would have a Learjet now if you put all that time into running your businesses.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you as a swimmer realize that what pleasure you've got out of it. And when you bump people that you see the potential, and with very little help, you can manage to get them to swim to Robben Island or the Channel or whatever it is. And that's where the pleasure comes from at the end of the day, is seeing the pleasure on people's faces who thought they could never do it. But in actual fact, it's just perseverance.
And looking back over your time in the sport, are you surprised at the success and the growth in the sport?
It's absolutely phenomenal. It really is. It's fantastic to watch. What has happened is that money's slowly coming into the game. And from my point of view, that's quite sad, but I also understand it because people, since I've left, I think there have been 500 swims. So the swimming rate has picked up because people are earning a living out of it.
And some of those people earning a living are doing in-person coaching. Some are doing remote coaching. Some are doing professional handling from the boat. I have to say I was very fortunate to have you on the boat on all of my big swims in the Cape. Always looking over to your rock-like steady confidence. I made the mistake one time, I think it was in Folds Bay, of kind of timidly asking you how many feeds were left, because I knew I couldn't ask you how much longer or how much more distance. But I think I got a response in Afrikaans, which is probably not a very nice response.
Yeah, I remember Steve Klugman asking me how long to go, and Steve Klugman had about the same speed as you. And I said to him, I thought we were about an hour off, and we hit that current that I didn't know about. And it took us about 4 hours. And that's why I decided I was never going to actually answer somebody directly. I'd rather say indirectly, I think it's possibly, and add an hour on each time. Excellent.
So I would, I think if correct, the fifth person to complete the swim. Steve remains the only person to do it in the dark?
The only person. In the pitch dark, and our shark shields batteries had run out. And we had to And we had no communication with the land, except a boat came up to us, and we sent them back to where you got out and got people to put their lights on of their motor cars so that we could see which way to go. And that was quite scary because great whites, when they attack, normally attack at night.
Did anybody tell Steve that before I got in the water, or did he know it?
I think Steve was the type of guy who made up his mind he was going to make it. It didn't matter what happened. Kevin Murphy had the same problem. He got stuck there, and he had at least another 4 hours to go. And when we offered him the sanctuary of the boat, he took it. But for good reason. There's not a lot of people that are prepared to swim with great whites at night, especially 200 of them.
And describe to people, Hugh, the challenges of Robben Island, going to the shortest distance over to Three Anchor Bay, and that kelp patch you put me through when I swam around the island.
Yeah, a lot of people have a lot of problems with kelp because it's quite a creepy feeling. And I'm not always sure if people have had a chance at that. So I often get them to do two things if they're going to be a long swim: get them to swim in kelp as practice, and also to swim at night to get used to that. Because if you're not used to that, you've got big problems.
And the shorter swim is what these days, 7.4K over to Blauberg, do you pronounce it?
Blauberg Strand. Yeah, that's the shorter one. And that's the way people get introduced to long distance swimming. And from there, then they do the longer ones and the doubles and the triples. And then they set their sights on the Channel and a few other swims around the world.
And then describe to everybody the interesting Cape Point swim, including the start, which I always remember fondly.
I can't remember it at this stage.
So Cape Point is something like 11K or 9K or something. I forget what it is. And as we were going out, I asked you and the pilot, Aaron, I said, is it, do you do this very often? And he said, no. He said, we don't do it hardly at all. I said, what happened to the last guy? And he said, oh, I needed to be rescued. It's always something nice to hear as you're heading out to the swim. And I said, what happened? I needed to be rescued from the start. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, it's a dumping beach. The waves go up and they go straight down. And he got injured.
That's so true.
Swimming in, and some hours later, they had to rescue him from the beach. So he advised me to lay perpendicular to the shore and roll in like a log might roll in. And I went,
that's absolutely
not
absolutely correct. That's a mean break there, because it just dumps. It just picks you up and throws you down. And if you're not used to it, you can get hurt.
Yeah, it's an interesting swim, and the last part of it is your introduction into False Bay. So it's not the same distance, but you go past the big lighthouse, and then you know you're in the home of the great whites.
That's it. As you turn the corner, I do remember taking you, and I did cut the corner by quite a lot. Most people won't take that shortcut, but you had the strength to get through it, and that's why I decided I'd take you through there.
I thought you were just upset I hadn't got injured on the start. So Hugh, you're still swimming these days a bit. Tell us about it.
I'm swimming very little, actually, in comparison to what I was doing, 8 kilometers a day. Now we're down to about 1.5 kilometers 3 times a week. And that's the max that I can do at this stage. So I'm still involved in that side of it, but I'm not involved with the boating side anymore. And I miss it like anything.
And the last question I have for you, Hugh, is I have an old video of you with your False Bay shark cage, which looked like the flimsiest thing ever, covered with probably chicken wire and a little outboard engine on the back of it. Did anybody ever swim very far in that thing?
I think the maximum I swam in that was probably about 12 Ks. But The reason why I built it was because I was one of the people that was definitely going to swim at night. So most of my swim, I swam outside the cage, waiting for nighttime to come because I was going to pop inside. I wasn't going to risk 200 great whites looking at me from a distance.
Well, listen, I want to thank you very much for your time today. And just as on a personal note, I put a lot of volunteer time into the sport, and there's several people that have motivated me to do that, and you're clearly one of them. I look to you as one of the absolute heroes of the sport, a guy that has dedicated his life to helping others and taking no pay. So, Hugh, on behalf of everybody that you've helped over the years, thank you very much, sir. You're a legend.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.